morning. We are going to record today let's see, I believe it's month 9. I can't believe it's month 9 already, but it is. And this month we are going to do 2 blocks. If you are in the class, you should have received an email that has the directions for converting the 2 templates of the incandescent block of the month. This is the incandescent block of the month that we are doing for whatever this is, 2020. So you have your pattern, and what I have done is, because all the classes that I teach, if possible, I convert to the Marty Michelle templates. So the 2 blocks we are going to be doing are Handy Andy and Point to the Middle. And we are doing 2 blocks this month because I like to have you completed by the end of July. So take a little time and download the attachment that I sent to you and read it, because I've already had a couple of people call and say I didn't get this or we're not doing that. So do take time reading the email and also the little bit of a blip that I have at the beginning of the instructions. So today we're going to start off with Handy Andy, and it's going to be a little bit different. We have been doing template sets A and B. Today we are doing L and M, and L and M are oftentimes sold together. They are companions to each other, and the big difference between the 2, and I'll explain it just a little bit. I know a lot of people don't want to know. Ooh, I don't know what that is. But anyway, a lot of people do not want to know why and how, but both of these are 12-inch blocks finished. And if you look at them and count them, and that's how you decide what template set that you do use. And if you look at this one here, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-inch grid. So if you take and divide 5 in by, or 12 by 5, it's kind of a crazy little measurement. And this one here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-inch grid. So they're both companions to each other, but they're not your typical 4-inch base or 3-inch base. So it's like 1 and I don't know. They're crazy measurements. So that's why the template set works fantastic in doing it. I'm going to talk first about this is Handy Andy, and it's kind of interesting because we're dividing the center block into smaller units, and then the outside half square triangles are a little bit different in doing that. So one thing that is going to be different about how you can cut that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, is the fact that if you are using the incandescent fabric, which is an ombre fabric, this technique and how you lay them together won't work for you, because you are actually going to cut almost one at a time with the templates in doing that. I think Kirsten will show you the 2 blocks that are in the incandescent ombre fabrics when we're finished with talking about how to cut them. And the first color 1, you're going to use template set M, and this is only M that is going to work on the Handy Andy, and you're going to use M76. And the thing that's really going to save you a lot of time if you're going to do this, and oftentimes it doesn't work for me because I'm not sure what color I'm going to put there, because I haven't assigned fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3. Every month I do a block, I kind of look at my fabrics, see what I want to pop out of the block itself and what I want to showcase. And so I cut a lot of examples and then decide then at that point. But if you do know which fabrics are going to go together, one of the biggest time-saving tips that I can give you is that you're going to lay your 2 fabrics, like this one here, fabric 1 and fabric and background. I know now that that is what it was going to be, and if I made all the blocks the same, I would take my fabrics, and I like to work with a chunk about the size of a fat quarter. Just depends upon what you have. I don't like to work with a big chunk of fabric when cutting with templates. So, and another thing that I like to stress, and if you've had classes from me, is the lengthwise grain, and that is parallel to the selvage. I've cut the selvage off of both of these, but the parallel to the selvage has the least amount of give, stretch, most stable grain that you can cut. This is crosswise, which gives you a lot of stretch, and this is the lengthwise grain. So I usually always cut and straighten my lengthwise grain. And what I'm going to emphasize this time is this is my background fabric. This is just some of my other, this is what the fabric that I used as my color 1. And I will lay them, and actually they need to lay this way if I'm going to show you how to do these. Because set M and L are not a typical 2.5 inch strip, 1.5 inch strip, whichever way you want to do it, you need to actually use your template as a guide. And I am actually going to pull out M75, which is actually a square, and that's my finished size of my half square triangles. So if you see that, my strip that I need to cut is the same width of this. So it's actually easier to use M75 to cut my strip than it is to use the M76, but you can use the M76 if you want to. So I straightened these out this morning before I got here. So I'm going to actually use the M75 and I'm going to lay it across along the edge of my ruler, and I'm going to run my template back and forth, which is going to give me the exact size of the strip that I need to cut my half square triangle units. Making that, let me see, there. And my favorite cutter to use with my templates is the 28 millimeter in doing that. If you're used to using the 45, that's fine, but I like to use the 28 for cutting my templates. So I've got my ruler laid across the width of the strip that I'm needed to cut my half square triangle units. And I oftentimes think about this when I'm cutting at home, and I think I've got to share this tip, and maybe I already have. But, and this is something I learned from Marty, is that you embed your cutter about 1/2 inch from the starting point, pull back, and then cut on across. And I'm only going to cut to that end of my ruler here. And that way your fabric does not travel, and it really does. It's something you have to train yourself to do, but it really does make a difference. I'll go ahead and cut on down. I think I'm going to run off my board, but we'll make it work. There's the scissor right here. I can finish that. Okay. So I'm going to pull this back, and then I'm going to start. And I usually cut 4 layers at a time, so I am going to double this over. And if you notice, I have my right sides together. I'll get that back over here. And I'm going to start with my, let's go this direction. And pull your cutter back, cut it. I'm going to nip those off real quick. And then you can rotate, or you could use that small board, works really well too. And you can turn the board if you have an issue having your fabric. I usually cut on the corner of my sewing table at home, and I can kind of move around so I don't have to move my fabric that much. So continue cutting. I'm just going to go ahead and turn around, and I'll just alternate back and forth. And then by doing that, you actually have your triangles ready to just peel off, and it will be ready to chain piece. So it does save a lot of time, and 4 layers at a time is what I usually end up doing. So that's going to make all of your half square triangles. It goes all the way around. That's using your background fabric and color 1. So you're going to cut 12, because there's 1, 2, 3 times 4 is 12. So you need 12 of those, and that's M76. And the same thing with your background fabrics. That's M76 here, doing your background fabric. I use the M75, which is also, you're going to be cut. Oh, do I have the wrong one? Background? Oh no, I corrected from that. And then the M76, so M75 here and M76, lay them together, and it works and cuts very rapidly and very fast. This is actually also what you're going to cut, and I think if you look at that, I did a little bit of color placement changing, so I've actually used a different fabric in the center for mine. I think in the original they have the brown here in the center also, or color, that's actually color 2, I believe. And we're going to talk a minute about color 2. Color 2 is also cut the same way with the background fabric, and it is actually done with M77, I believe is what it is, that was just laying right here, but it's, yeah, M77. And if you look at M77, the lengthwise grain that's marked on that is actually on the long leg of the triangle. And that is the way you need to cut it. And the reason you need to cut it on the long leg of the triangle is because the ultimate goal is to keep the lengthwise stable grain all the way around your block, your unit, whichever. This just happens to be, if you look at this, this would be like a little block in the middle. So if I would cut that like I did the outside, the long leg would be on the bias. So you do want to pay attention to that long leg being on the lengthwise grain, because then that gives us the most stable grain all the way around that inside block that you're creating. The other thing I want to mention about making those units, those are actually, what do they call them, a little butterfly unit? I call it a little butterfly block. And I did put on the cutting directions how I like to have you press to make everything nest a little bit better. And the thing that you need to do is that you will go ahead and chain piece these through. They're pieced a little bit different than you do a half square triangle. You piece those through, press them to the center, and you'll put two of those together like this. This is the one half, and here's the other half. And the thing I like to recommend to eliminate bulk is in the center of each one of those blocks, is that if you pop just a few of those stitches, I sew with a small enough stitch that I actually have to take a seam ripper and pop those few stitches back. Sometimes you can just take and twist a little bit and they'll pop. And then you'll rotate those seam allowances. These happen to be going clockwise, I think. Depending upon how you put them together, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. But those seam allowances will rotate. You'll end up with a little four patch in the center, and press that just like that, and it eliminates a lot of that bulk. You can do that a lot of areas in your piecing when you just pop that back and eliminate that and making it work. So after you create all those units, it's the half square triangle units. There's going to be 12 of those. There's going to be 4 sets. You're going to get 8, and they'll make 4 little butterfly blocks. And then you'll create it row by row by row once you get those units done. So it's a pretty fast block. These are 2 of the fastest blocks that you are going to have to make in your set of blocks that we have been working on this month. Or a year, I guess I should say, not 12 months. Then the next block, that is the Handy Andy. This one here is point to the middle, fun block, really kind of a very pretty block. And here again, it's a very, very easy block to do and to create. So the template sets are going to be a little bit different on this one. It is actually going to be it's going to be your M77, and where I just told you to do it where the long leg is on the lengthwise grain, I'm going to tell you this one, you're not going to do it that way. You're going to do it like your typical half square triangle unit. Your most stable grain is going to be on the outside and not in the bias cut on the long leg is okay on this to do it. Otherwise, I'd have bias all the way to the outside of this. So this one here, you're actually going to want to cut the other direction of your unit. And you're going to, first off, let me get the right one. Yeah, first off, on the instructions, you are going to create all of these half square triangle units, and that'll be done exactly the same way that I told you to do the cutting of the 2 colors together. Or you can go ahead and cut all your triangles separately with the ombre fabric and making that work. And you have to remember that on piecing these, you want to have, they're not going to be the same, right? Yeah, they're not the same. The angles are going different. So you're basically doing a mirror image of these triangle units, because otherwise they will not look like it's kind of like a little bear paw. is what we're creating. So the next step is to take in your pattern, and actually I want to show you the cutting of that rectangle, and that is going to be, I thought I got it out, there. You're going to use L set on this one here, and if you don't have set L, it's just rectangles that and squares that you're using in set L. But L and M do complement each other as far as making that. So we're going to use set L, and we're going to cut a strip. It's L69, and here again we're going to move it back and forth and cut the strip the perfect width of that template of your background fabric. It's only of your background, I believe, on this block in doing that. So this is a little bit different. If you look at this template, it's actually two templates in one, and it's template L69, but if you look closely, there is a 69A that is just a shorter unit, and you can use the same template for both. So what you do is you're going to lay the template after you cut your width of your strip. You're going to lay your template, you're going to nub these points off here, backhanded. And then I'm going to scoot my template down, match up those points. I should do it to where, there we go, we'll just do it. Pull it back and cut those. And that's how you just make it a little bit shorter. And I'm going to do the same thing again. And you can cut the 4 at a time. That's usually how I do it. Pull it back, come across, and then nip your points. So that's the unit that's going to do kind of a little sashing area in this block. And that would be exactly one. And if you don't, it's actually having you measurements of 2.5, let's see, 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle is what they're using in that area. So you're going to create those units, adding the square onto each one. And then this template right here is it's an L67. L67. So that's an L67. This is an L69A. And these are actually an M. An M77 is what we're using here. So fast block, create your half square triangles, do your little sashing units with your rectangles and your squares, create the triangle units, add it onto your larger square, which is your corner block, and sash it together. And it's a very, very fast block to put together and making just a really finished 12-inch. It should measure 12.5 inches. Using the templates and the nipped off, I guess you should call the engineered corners. Once you get used to those, they are the best way to do it. So I think that's all I have to show you this morning. If you have any questions, give us a call. And if you didn't get the instruction sheet, give me a call. I did have a couple of emails that came back. So you that are out there taking the class, let me know, and we will see that you give it along with the link. Doing that.
We're reopening?
Oh, you want me to talk about opening? All righty, guys. If you have not called, we are opening for, tomorrow. And it is by appointment only, so there's a few of those appointments still left for the afternoon. I think the afternoon area is the only place we have some appointments left. And then our shop will be opening to the public June 1st at 10 a.m. in the morning, and we are going to be closing at 5. So a little bit change in our hours, but we're here, so give us a call. And we do have quarter-inch elastic. Thanks a bunch.